My name is Roisín Campbell-Palmer. I'm Head of Restoration with the Beaver Trust, and today we are at the Red Kite Centre in Argody in Scotland. So this is a working farm, but they've been really key in bringing some species back to Scotland, such as the red kite and of course beavers, which is why we're here today. So day to day I work with a team of field officers and we work with beavers and people to make sure both can live together. So sometimes that can be anything from wrapping trees, or at times we have to trap and relocate the beavers, which means move them to other parts, such as this centre here, where their presence is much more welcome and it doesn't conflict with farming interests. So I've always worked with animals. I've always wanted to work with animals. That's been a big passion of mine. So I feel I started my journey into this industry by firstly volunteering. I always wanted to work with animals, so any opportunity I could. And for me, that was helping out in my local cat and dogs home. And then I stayed on at school, I went to university to study animals. I studied zoology, the study of animals, which I loved. It was really good, really important, and I think interesting facts every day. But then after uni, I got an opportunity to work in the zoo, which really helped me learn so much more about animals, how to look after them, how to handle them. And this really set me on my way, I think, for a career in conservation, especially with what I do now day to day, which is really looking at the animals, making sure their welfare, so how they live and if they're happy, is really prioritised in everything we do, and just making sure that we monitor them and that they're adjusting to their new life once we release them. So I think beavers are really fascinating species. They're this huge mammal that live in this freshwater land interface, so they can make so many changes to their environment. We know they can cut down trees, and that is for food, but also building materials. So what do beavers build? Well, they can build a whole range of structures, and they also build burrows or lodges, and that's where they sleep, so like their dens, and that keeps them nice and dry. All the family come together, and that's their safe place. So beavers also make dams, and these are important structures for beavers. They are made out of sticks, stones, mud, sometimes leaves, vegetation, and they put them across the watercourse, a bit like a leaky wall. But why do you think they do this? Yeah, so some really good answers there. So when beavers want to live in water, they need a certain depth to make them feel safe. This is because in beavers' mind, there's still some big predators out there, like wolves and bears. So water provides a really good safety for them. So sometimes when they move into smaller water courses, where the water is very shallow, they want to make it a bit deeper. So they build these structures called dams to slow down the water and make a pond behind the dam to keep them safe. So we've got a short piece of footage to show you just how beavers build a dam, and hopefully that gives you an idea of why they're called nature's engineers. So beavers are freshwater species, which means they must live in water. So they spend a lot of their time swimming, eating aquatic plants. Now, they don't spend their whole life in water because they have to sleep on the land, but water is their safety point. So you never find beavers away from fresh water. So now we've learned a little bit about beavers and their habitats. What do you think they need in a wetland like this? So there's actually a long list of what beavers like in these nice habitats to keep them happy. So things like slow water, deep water, lots of different plants to feed on, from trees to grass to shrubs. There's a whole host of plants that they eat. They've got a very, very wide diet. But they also want nice safe banks that they can make burrows into as well. And then we know these habitats make lovely homes for a whole range of other species. Do you think you could list some? Yeah, some really good ideas there. So we know these beaver wetlands are homes for a whole range of other animal species. Day to day we see lots of dragonflies, amphibians, fish, birds, bats at night come out and eat all the insect life that's attracted to beaver habitats. And we can see some bigger mammals in there like foxes and badgers. Basically, when beavers create these ponds, it brings a whole host of other animal and plant species to them. So our wetlands are really, really important ecosystems. So another thing you're definitely going to find in a beaver wetland is lots of tree stumps. But what do you think's happened there? So often when you see a cut tree, it's usually us as humans that have felled that tree, probably with a saw or chainsaw. But beavers can do it purely with their teeth. They're super strong animals, and you can see how they use this wood when we look at the dams, when we look at their feeding stations, because for a big rodent, they can take down huge trees. And this is so they have building material, but they also eat parts of the tree. So back to beaver dams, because these can be really, really important to a beaver family. So like I mentioned before, beaver dams can be viewed like a leaky wall, and this is how they slow water down. So water still gets through the dam, but it just takes a longer time for it to pass in and around the dam. So this really slows the water down. So if you think of a big heavy rain or a flood passing down a water course, these dams can slow the water and just make it longer until it reaches the river or the sea below. And in that way, beavers keep more water on the landscape with all these ponds. So they're really, really important for water storage. So what do you think happens when there's no beavers or beaver dams to the rainwater that falls? So yeah, some really clever answers there. So when there's lots of dams in the system, the water falls from the sky and is just held that little bit longer on the landscape because the leaky dams take time for the water to work its way around. Without those dams, the water can fall very fast, seep through the ground and into our watercourses and leaves much faster. So this is why we can sometimes have flood events, because there's nothing to slow the water down. And here's a short animation that shows how beaver dams can hold more water on our landscapes and are really important in potentially reducing flooding.
So how can beavers play a role in restoring an incised stream? With their innate urge to build, beavers will dam narrow trenches during low flows. During high flows, these dams can wash out, which then helps to widen the trench, allowing a floodplain to begin to form. As the stream widens, the flow slows, allowing beavers to build wider, more stable dams. As the dams begin to trap sediment, this provides nutrients for vegetation, and as they begin to establish, the water table rises, allowing the stream to reconnect to its former floodplain. Eventually, a complex habitat of beaver dams, live vegetation and dead wood slow the flow even further, raising the ground level and creating a more resilient habitat that is much wetter and better able to cope with extremes in weather and temperature.
So our work with beavers is helping restore them, and this means we are bringing this species back from where it is previously being totally removed. So we think beavers last lived in Britain about 400 years ago, and in the last 20 years our organisations plus others are working really hard to bring this species back. So we went and we got beavers from parts of Europe and brought them back to Scotland. So a lot of our work today is making sure we can increase the distribution of beavers all over Britain, and that means sometimes we trap them and we move them to sites like this where there hasn't been beavers for hundreds of years. I think what I would always recommend if you wanted to try and follow a career in conservation is you really have to take any opportunity that's provided. So feel free to try something new, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. Feel free, if you can, volunteer some time with other people. Just try and learn as much as you can, not only about the nature around you, but what sort of careers might open up, because they can be very varied and you never know what the next opportunity might be. So now it's over to you to see how good a beaver you can be. Hopefully your teachers have given you a whole range of materials. You might have some sticks, some moss, and you're going to be a beaver and build a beaver dam and see how good you can be at holding back the water. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I hope this has been interesting, and hopefully one day you will see beavers in the wild near you.
Welcome back, everybody, and I'm sorry about that intrusion in the middle. I was been informed that it wasn't a beaver chewing through my internet cables. It was an update that was needed on my computer. So great timing there, and thank you for the team in Scotland for pausing while they did that. Some great answers coming through on Mentimeter. Some really good knowledge already of what things might live in different habitats. So things, typical things that we might expect. So things like frogs, foxes, otters, and then some really, really in-depth ones perhaps as well. Dragonflies, ospreys as well we've got, which are another cracking species that have recently found their way back to Britain. And I think what an exciting time to be alive, to be the first people to live and share the country with beavers in the first time in over 400 years is really cool. And to be able to speak to people involved in that work, like Roisín, and you have an opportunity to do that now. So on Mentimeter, you'll see the slide for questions, which I see is being populated already. And I'm going to see, I've given Roisín a couple of minutes to get back into the room, and there she is. Roisín, welcome back. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here. So really excited to talk to you all.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's start off. We've got some questions coming in. So firstly, what's your job title?
Oh, my job title is Head of Restoration. And restoration is, I guess, this term that we can bring animals back or restore our habitats or restore our species. So I lead up a field team that's based all over Britain, and we get to do exciting stuff like you've seen.
Amazing. It did look so cool. Okay, so how did you get into being a conservationist?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a long journey. Like I mentioned, I just knew from very young I wanted to work with animals. So any opportunity I could, from volunteering or just having a range of multiple pets, much to my parents' delight. So always really fascinated about them. When I was in school, I really liked subjects such as science, maths, not so much, but you have to do these things. And then I was lucky to go on to university, and I went from Ireland to Scotland to study zoology, and just any opportunity I could work with animals. I got a job in the zoo. So yeah, that's how I got here. And the zoo was one of the first projects in Britain that really wanted to look at bringing back beavers. So I was lucky enough to go out and study beavers more in Norway, and then come back to Scotland and work with them when we brought them back.
Amazing. So, assuming you didn't have a pet beaver, what pets did you have?
I had everything from fish to stick insects to guinea pigs, and I always wanted a dog. So only when I was older, like now, I got myself a dog for the first time. So I got a rescue staffy, and she's my world. But yeah, I had a whole range when I was younger, and was always bringing things I found out and about back home. So yeah, my parents had opinions on that. Yeah.
I imagine they did. When did you start your job?
So this job I'm in, I started about 5 years ago, but I've been working with beavers directly for about 16 years now. That's really old. So after I came out of the zoo, I worked a lot. With different beaver populations or different organizations all over Britain. I was self-employed, which I loved. And then the Beaver Trust is quite a new charity. They came along and offered me this great job and opportunity as well to continue, I guess, my love of beavers, because I was really passionate by then. I'd worked with them with a long time. So this really gives me the ideal job opportunity to explore working with them closely, but also with landowners, with a whole range of different organizations, and hopefully making a bit of a impact of releasing beavers and getting them back on our landscapes.
So, how many people work for the Beaver Trust?
I think we're on to 15 now, so we're not huge, but we're spread all over the country. So I'm very lucky. I've got a brilliant team, and I would say that. So there's about 5 or 6 of us that are really working, day to day, hands on with the beavers, and then we've got like an education team, we've got a fundraising team. So we're kind of spread out all over the country, and different people have different jobs, but our field team is probably working closely with the beavers day to day.
Amazing, thank you. So, question here: what do you love about your job?
What I love about my job is I get to be outside. I get to, work with the animals that I really love. Yes, there comes a lot of paperwork and boring meetings, but I think I've got a lot of freedom, and I think we can make a noticeable difference. So sometimes if we're working in areas where beavers are, causing people stress or problems, we can help them and hopefully make a change. But also, when we trap and move beavers that might otherwise not be able to stay where they are, we get to work with a big team of vets, and people are really passionate, and projects that really want to see beavers back. So when you see them swim away and then you go back maybe 6 months to a year, and you see them, they've changed this landscape. Everyone is really impassioned about them, and just really love and are excited about seeing the species again. Like you mentioned, it hasn't been in Britain for a long time. So I think when you see the passion in other people, it makes you feel like you've done a good job.
Amazing. And I can feel the passion coming out the screen now, Roisin, as well. So it's obvious that it's there. You mentioned other people that you work with, like vets as well. So I speak to a lot of students who at school are interested in being a vet or a veterinary nurse. But often they perhaps think that those jobs are around small, perhaps cats and dogs and small animals. So do vets work with wildlife conservation as well?
Absolutely. And I guess I, like a lot of people, always wanted to be a vet as well. And then I saw it is quite hard to be a vet, and lots of time at university. So I went for zoology. But I mean, vets can be obviously, pet animals, farm animals, but for nearly 15, 20 years, because I worked in the zoo as well, there's always been a really, really strong vet team that are lucky enough to work with zoo animals. So I guess they've got the dream job, don't they? They get to work with kind of monkeys and, all different tigers, everything quite exciting. But vets have been really, really important for the restoration of wildlife. When we move animals, we always have to be careful that we make sure we screen them for a range of disease and parasites, but also we have to check that those animals are okay. we wouldn't release them out into the wild unless they are, able to cope, is what we say, and able to survive. So the veterinary team with us is really, really important, and they check over all our animals before we put them out. And also, we do long-term studies, which means we regularly are trapping or collecting samples from beavers, and often that's poo, because that can tell you a lot. To make sure we're just monitoring the levels and if there are diseases in the wild, so that we know our actions are not impacting another wildlife, because that's really important. So that's why the vet team are really important.
Amazing, thank you. And you mentioned moving beavers there, so we have a question here.
Mhm.
What do you use to move beavers to their new habitat? And that's from Greenvale Primary.
So we have they're beaver traps, and that can sound a bit kind of, scary, but what they are, they're huge because beavers are big. So these are big kind of metal boxes that we put lots of food that beavers really love in there. So things that are sweet, like carrots and apples. Beavers love those kind of foods. So we put them in the middle, and then the beavers have to come all the way in, and then the doors come down. And then we come and pick them up because we've got alarms that come to our phone. So we know when the beavers go in. Then we go and put them into a travel crate, and then we bring them to our veterinary facilities. So that's how we move beavers. So we try to make it as kind of safe and calm as we can. And then, if we have to move them again, we put them back into like travel boxes that you would do like pets. But for beavers, they have to be super sized, super strong, because remember these teeth that can take down trees. So it's kind of like a metal box with lots of holes in it so we can make sure they can breathe. And then we move them around where they need to go and release them and watch them go.
That's cool. Okay, so yeah, I can understand why a strong box would be needed there.
Very strong.
So you mentioned their big teeth. There's another question here that's kind of along those lines. So it's a double prong. I'm going to ask two at once, actually. So are beavers friendly, and can they be aggressive? So two different questions, but the same thing, really.
Yeah, I mean they're powerful animals. Very few animals can really take down a big tree. So when we think of other animals that can do that, we're thinking about elephants. So, beavers have these very, very strong jaw muscles and big teeth. I've actually got a skull here. I don't know if you can see it, so I'll maybe hold it up. And this is just from a baby, so you can imagine what an adult might look like. So if I hold it like this, and can you see these teeth? They're really, really, really strong teeth. So beavers, are they friendly? Mostly. So you just have to be careful with an animal that is quite strong and does have big teeth. Beavers feel very safe in the water. So if you see them in the water, they're not going to be a threat, they're not going to be a danger. But sometimes because we're trapping and handling them, any wild animal that can make them feel scared. So some can be a little bit more aggressive, but we make sure we've got very safe handling techniques that make sure the animal is safe more than anything, and we're safe as human beings. But what we see in beavers, there's a whole range of personalities. So some can be quite quiet and a bit more reserved, and others, might be wanting to defend themselves. And I think that's fair enough with wildlife because we need to respect that and leave them alone as well.
So with those teeth in mind, I remember hearing from somebody that I've no doubt that you work quite closely with, Derek Gow, that when you pair them up, so a boy and a girl going on their first date, that you need to be careful about the reintroduction because they might not like each other and could use those teeth to tell each other that.
Yes, very, very much. Beavers like to defend their own space, and if they need to fight other beavers, they can kind of give each other warning signs, or they leave little scent marks, or they do kind of tail slapping behavior that kind of says back off a little bit. But obviously, because we're putting animals together, we have to give them time and space to kind of get to know each other. So when we move boy and girl beavers for the first time, we put them out onto a kind of a pond so that they can get to know each other. And if they want to back off and have a bit of chill out time, that they can. Because we're mindful that these are big, powerful animals. But also as humans, if we intervene, we can be causing stress to the animals. So we try to give them as much space and they can come together in their own time. So it's a very kind of monitored situation when we introduce beavers to each other.
So yeah, not simple at all. And I'm guessing because there's a question here about your training. So obviously you mentioned all of your studies, and I'm guessing some of that picked up on animal behavior as well, which you'll be looking at there. So how long did it take you to train for your job, and did you enjoy the training?
Yes, and I would say I don't think I'm finished yet. So every day is definitely a learning opportunity, and I think that's why I find beaver so interesting because you can always learn more stuff. Um, After I did my degree at on zoology, I went on to do a master's in animal behavior, and I absolutely loved that because it was very practical, it was very applied, and I felt I learned so much. Um, but I think animal behavior is something you always have to watch and be quiet and listen. And like I say, you can always learn stuff as well. But that was one of my favorite topics to learn about animals and how they behave. And you constantly just have to read it and kind of assess the situation. So I can recommend that course. That was amazing.
Good for anybody that likes people watching. It's kind of the same thing, but with
Yeah.
animals, isn't it? I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are there any jobs like yours that don't require degrees?
Yeah, and I would say my job doesn't require degrees. So I would say, there's this balance. Yes, you can go and study a lot of topics, but you can also live and experience things as well. So I guess that's why I would always recommend if you have opportunities to get hands-on experience, that can be just as valuable as kind of qualifications and degree. I was lucky I got to experience both. So I'm very kind of grateful and excited about what I got to learn, especially at university level, because I thought, at that stage you can drop all the subjects that you maybe don't like quite as much and you can really focus on the ones that you do. But again, it's hands-on learning is really, really important as well. So there's almost two paths, I think, to this job. So it's worth investigating as well.
Amazing. That's really useful to know. Thank you. So, a question here that I think we'd all like to know the answer to: have you ever been bitten by a beaver?
Yes, and it was not pleasant, and I would not recommend it. So as you can imagine, they're big animals. We're stressing them by handling them. Wildlife wants to defend itself. I would just say it was a half bite, and it was right at the bottom of my small finger. So I could have been very unfortunate if it went a bit to the right. So just respect wildlife is what I would say, and it could be a
That's not
close
bad.
call. Yeah.
Okay, so now specifically you and your interest about beavers. So, a couple along the same lines here. What made you like beavers so much? And what's your favorite thing about beavers?
Mhm. I guess I was kind of late to the game with beavers. My interest always was in kind of amphibians, actually. So I did, especially at the zoo, I was a reptile keeper, so I looked after all the frogs, different reptiles, snakes, which I loved. So I never really thought about beavers until the opportunity was kind of presented to me, and I'm like, oh, they sound quite cool. I quite like to go to Norway. Why not? Let's see what happens. And that just started this path, which has become very, very beaver focused. What do I like most about them? I think they always surprise me. There's always something to learn. I never get tired of watching them or seeing what they do, but also it kind of bridges this kind of question to me. How can we live with some of the species we've lost again? And I think beavers present both an exciting opportunity, but they can be challenging. There's some groups of people or different land management practices, as we call them, so such as farming, that if beavers come back in, it's challenging. So beavers always make me think, and I don't get bored. So that's what keeps me interested in beavers.
Who wouldn't want a job where you wouldn't get bored? One thing that I think you probably covered during the live stream out on site there, but I think I'd like to ask again for the sake of everybody watching. So a video of a beaver in my local river popped up the other day, and one of the many comments that popped up were all along the same lines, which is, well, there goes all the fish then. So is that something you come across a lot?
All the time. So we obviously do a lot of work with, we've got education officers, we've got people that go to schools, but also my day to day is hopefully trying to teach people as well. I think people presume beavers because they're such big animals that live in the water that there's no way they could be a vegetarian, so they must eat fish. So I think again, because we haven't lived with this species for many years, people maybe forget or misconstrued what they do. So categorically, beavers do not eat fish, but they live very closely with fish. So we have to kind of keep on repeating that message. So yep, we've no evidence that they've ever had a fish, still. So yeah, we have to keep saying that message.
And I've seen so many exciting reports that where you find beavers now, or where you place beavers, that you get an increase in things like fish and even water voles have been found to increase in number as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's another exciting kind of avenue for this work. We do a lot of research, we do a lot of science, we do a lot of monitoring, and then we kind of hopefully get to publish our results. So a lovely story that's kind of come out of beavers coming back, especially to parts of England, is where they create the ponds, where they make the habitat more complex. Other species that we are living with and other species we are concerned about because they're falling in numbers, such as water voles, are actually increasing in both numbers, but also kind of their spread because beavers create these really complex habitats that a whole load of other animals and plants come and live in. So these are these extra, what we call biodiversity benefits of having beavers back. And the water vole explosion around beaver ponds has been a really positive story as well that we're really happy to kind of be a small part of. Yep.
That's so cool. It must be such a nice thing to see as well, an additional benefit that was perhaps not expected.
Unexpected, but yeah, it's come out so brilliant.
So there's a question here, and perhaps given your background, you could explain the difference between breeds and species, but the question is how many breeds of beaver are there?
Okay, so there's two species of beaver alive today across the world. So one is what we call the Eurasian beaver, and that's the one that we're working with. So that's the beaver that's found in Europe and parts of Asia, and that's our kind of common species. In America, there's another beaver species that looks exactly the same, acts the same, and at one point they thought all beavers were the same, but some genetic work has definitely concluded that these are two different species, which means they can't breed together. So it's unusual in the animal world that they are so closely looking alike and acting alike, but actually they can't breed. So the species question is there's two species. There used to be in the past a lot more different species of beavers, but they've been lost over the years. So if you think about, there used to be lots of dinosaur species, but they're kind of gone now. So you don't really get breeds of beavers, um, but you do get kind of populations of beavers that have been in different parts of Europe and have been kind of separated from each other for a long time. So if you maybe think of, I don't know, like a Rottweiler and a Collie, they're different breeds of dogs, but they could still breed together if that makes sense. So the different populations of beavers in Europe can all breed together, and that's fine. But the different species of beavers in North America and the Eurasian cannot breed together and to produce babies, if
And is
that
it
makes
true that despite that, they look quite similar as well, and it can be
They
quite
look
hard to tell the
almost
difference?
identical. It's really hard. So I think if I saw them next to each other, I could probably go, okay, that's maybe American and that's Eurasian. But often when you see a beaver, you're just seeing this kind of head swimming in the water, and that's very difficult to tell apart.
So with the work that you're doing, and obviously beavers spreading throughout the United Kingdom now with our first unpenned release, actually in the county where I am in Dorset, do you think that in the near future that people will be able to see signs of beavers in many places near to them?
I hope so, and hopefully that means I've done my job properly. I think it might take time. Britain is still quite a big place. We have a lot of wild beavers in Scotland, so if you're lucky enough to live up here, you could go and see beavers. In England, they're wild beavers are kind of concentrated, around Devon area, Cornwall, and over in Kent, but with all this extra work and with beavers moving themselves through the landscapes, I think it's going to be a more common species. It's still always special to see a beaver, I would say. But I think in the next few years, hopefully more people will get to see them. And if they don't see a beaver themselves, they'll see the habitat that beavers create. And I think that's really important too.
So you mentioned the beavers in Scotland. Specific question from Greenvale Primary. Do you know how many beavers there are in Scotland?
So the government asked us to count them. I'm still working on this, but we think there's maybe anywhere from 3 to 4 thousand beavers in Scotland. So that's a really good healthy number. So we're quite happy with that. And if we think about 20 years ago, there weren't many at all. So I think that's been a huge positive for conservation.
That is incredible. That's far more than I thought that would be.
Mm.
Okay, so a bit of a, I don't mean this to be an aggressive question, Roisin, by any means, but you love beavers, it's clear to see. I really love them too. But if I didn't like them and didn't care about them, why should I care about them? If you can't get me to love them, why should I care about what they do?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, first I say why? What don't you like about beavers? But I think I would say I think we all know we're in a position where, climate change is a factor where we can kind of see we could have managed our landscapes a bit better. We should be creating more green spaces. And to me, here is an animal that comes back and creates habitats such as wetlands, which as humans, we have probably drained or modified over, the last few decades, maybe even centuries. And we can see we're in a place in the world where we are losing our plant and animal species. So if beavers can be a small part of helping putting back some of these habitats, I think if we can tolerate them, we should give them a bit more space. We should give our rivers a bit more space and just make things more messy and more naturalized. And that would be my pitch for here's an animal that does that for us.
Well, if I wasn't already inspired, I would be now. Just coming towards the end of this session, so thank you for all of the answers you've given so far. Have you got any advice for anybody considering now joining the environment sector? Any general advice at all?
Um, I would say don't look to make a lot of money, but you will find a job that I think will excite you every day, that you can be very passionate about, and hopefully you feel you could make some changes and some difference in this world. Um, yeah, and I would recommend it. But I would also say maybe don't be scared to try things. And if it doesn't work out and you don't like it, that's fine. You've got so much time. You can change your mind and you can find something that I think really excites you in life. And I think that's what you should aim for as well.
Amazing, I love that. So just like the water courses that Beavers help to create, a career can be as wiggly and as
Exactly.
changeable as those. That's amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody tuning in and for all your questions as well. I hope you've really enjoyed that session. I've certainly learned a lot as well. I'll be putting the recording up on the website in a couple of hours, and the activity that Roisin mentioned earlier around creating your own dam will be in there as well. Some breakdown of instructions. So thank you to everybody who's joined us across the entirety of Green Careers Week. It's been really amazing to hear of all of the work, and I think this session on beavers being, a really positive story for conservation and for our ecosystems and our environment generally is a really good place to finish. So Roisin, thank you so much for taking the time to show us your work and for talking us through your career as well.
No, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. See you all soon.